Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with our series, Dumbfounding Definitions, Dizzying Distinctions, and Diabolical Doctrines, a series sorted through some of the jargon of philosophy. In this video, we're going to be looking at what is populism. Now, populism is a broad term used to describe a position which has been used to garner support by politicians on both the left and the right. Populist positions generally have three central features: a definition of the people, who are virtuous and oppressed, a definition of the elite, who are in power and immoral, and a normative statement that the needs of the people should override the needs of the elite. Now, what exactly each of those statements looks like, who fits into the people, who fits into the elite, and what needs to be done in order for the needs of the people to override the needs of the elite will depend on the particular type of populism that you're looking at. But those are generally kind of the three central pieces of a populist position. Now, populism is a unique position because it can arise in a range of political movements on either end of the political spectrum. While these positions differently define who fits into the category of the elite or the people, the general narrative that the elite have too much power over the people is the same. Broadly, constitutional democracies must balance two pressures, and populism kind of focuses down on one of these pressures and gives it privilege over the other. So the two pressures that constitutional democracies need to face are balancing the tyranny of the minority, so preventing the few from oppressing the many. This is solved through things like voting systems and having the many, the population writ large, be able to elect leaders or make decisions on referendums and policy change. It prevents a minority of people from gaining power over the majority because the majority always has a decision and is able to vote. And constitutional democracies are also faced with the other question, which isn't so much about political rights, but is more about civil liberties, which is the avoiding the tyranny of the majority, basically preventing the many from oppressing the few. This is where you have situations of a majority population, whether that's an ethnic group, whether that's a social class, whether that's a religion. In a democracy, in a full democracy that has no constitutional protections for rights, that group is able to completely impose its will on the other because they have 50 plus 1%, and that's all they need. This is why you have individual protections for individual liberties, whether that's life, whether that's particular freedoms to speak, protest, have rule of law, have a trial by jury of your peers, what have you. Those rights are there to prevent the majority from completely imposing its will, kind of its mob rule on the minority. Populism comes down firmly on the side that the majority is right and the minority is wrong. And so while it is fully in line with democracies in the sense that it is in line with the people choosing leadership and choosing policies, it is out of line with the constitutional element of constitutional democracies that thinks that there is a protection to be given for civil liberties for everyone, even individuals in minority groups. This position, which can strengthen the political representation of a society while potentially curtailing its civil liberties. So those are some of the trade-offs in pushing a populist platform. Now, left-wing populism and right-wing populism both do exist, but they often look a little bit different. So left-wing populism often, but not always, focuses on income inequality or wealth inequality. The elite in this frame are the wealthy of a society, the millionaires and billionaires, the capital. The poor, the people, quote unquote, are the poor, the 99%, the labor of a system. Under this narrative, a society needs progressive taxes and a social safety net policies paid for by those progressive taxes. Progressive taxes here meaning the strict definition of progressive of people who have more pay more, people who have less pay less. To redistribute wealth, reducing the power of the elite, and empowering the people. So you see these kind of three elements. We have a definition of the elite, people with money. We have a definition of the people, people with less money. and we have this kind of normative framing of what we need to do to fix this imbalance, to take the elite out of power. We need to tax them, and we need to redistribute wealth. Now, this is a nice framing. There are further policies further to the left that are more extreme and may say enact more extreme policies, but this is the broad scope of kind of how things can look. On the right, right-wing populism is often, though not always, more aligned on ethnic, religious, or cultural lines. For these populists, the people are the dominant cultural or ethnic group in the country. So that's the true people of that ethnicity in that country, whereas the elite are often a minority ethnic group on whom the problems can be blamed. These may be immigrants taking jobs from domestic workers. These might be a culturally different, though not necessarily ethnically different population, such as an educated population that has greater economic power or greater ability to influence institutions. It could be, to look specifically at Tutsis in Rwanda holding many positions of power within a country, but being a minority ethnic group within that country, or Jewish people due to anti-Semitic beliefs about Jewish people and money. The policy proposals of such politicians often focusing on limiting immigration, expelling or even killing individuals from minority ethnic, religious, or cultural groups, or attacking academics and limiting the ability of research, data, and academia writ large to influence policy. So once again, we have the same framing. We have a framing of who the people are. The people are the true cultural group, the true national group, the true religious group, ethnic group, what have you, of the country. The elite are the people that fall outside of that, who are culturally different, ethnically different, what have you. And the policy is either to expel, kill, or limit the influence of those individuals. Now, these are just a few examples of populism. It's important to note that populism is not inherent to a political position. Rather, it's a set of justifications for a political position. You might believe in redistributive policies or limits on immigration for non-populist reasons. Populism is not necessarily a position in and of itself. It's rather a justification for a policy position. It's a set of arguments, not the end of that argument, not the conclusion of those arguments. Similarly, positions which are not generally populist can be framed in that way. And there are some people that use kind of populist justifications for positions which generally aren't framed in populist terms. Some justifications for feminism, for example, are based on the belief that a cadre of rich, white, straight, Christian, privileged men have created a patriarchal system to disadvantage women. This individual conscious discrimination is easier for some to get behind because it creates a populist divide between the good and the bad, the elite and the people. Then, compared to the common justification that gender roles are societal, reinforced by both men and women, and harmful to both men and women. While that second position may be more accurate or may be a more rational justification for some of the claims of feminism, the former argument is easier for people to identify with because it creates that populist divide of us, the people, and them, the bad elite. Now, due to the wide range of versions of populism, it's challenging to raise anything but the most general objections to it. Broadly, though, there are three types of objections that can be raised depending on the populism that you're dealing with. The first is a factual claim. This is the claim that the elite actually have less power than the people, aren't part of the oppression of the people, or don't exist because they're a figment of a conspiracy theory. The truth of this will depend on the specific type of populism, and it's an empirical claim that can be tested. In less extreme situations, you might say, does immigration actually lead to lower wages? Or do wealthy campaign donors actually lead to more regressive taxes, i.e. the wealthy are paying less and the poor paying more? So some of the truth of this can be tested. You, of course, can have more egregious claims of, does this secret cadre of people that run the world actually exist? It's empirically testable. It's a factual claim. Is that just a conspiracy theory? Those kinds of things can be tested and can be looked at. And if it's found that the elite don't exist or the elite don't actually have the power that the populace claims that they do, the argument falls apart. The second objection to populism is about its effectiveness. Populism necessarily divides society into us and them. And as humans, we feel nice when we're in a group and we're clearly delineated from the other group. And it can feel nice to people to feel separate from other people and say that I'm part of this group is right, your group is wrong, grr, I'm the hero of this story. However, when you divide people into the people that are good and the elites that are evil, while it can be ineffective at rallying support around a cause, it's often ineffective at building consensus for lasting broad-based policy change because it's inherently divisive. Because you inherently are separating us from them, you're saying that we need to dethrone or take out of power them, that group. Well, that group, when taken out of power, isn't going to be too happy about that. And if they have anything close to the power that the populists are claiming that they do, they probably will take revenge in some way, influencing a cycle of huge policy swings back and forth that don't accomplish any real progress that kind of a consensus-building process might do better at. Broadly, populism is ineffective at building consensus because it villainizes the other side in a way that other justifications for policy positions do not. And the third concern with populism is it may lead to tyranny of the majority. As we talked about earlier, generally constitutional democracies enshrine certain unalienable rights that even popular will cannot override. Without such protections, majority groups may use their power in elected offices to oppress and demonize minority groups. Whether that looks like murdering rich aristocrats, as in the Reign of Terror in France, or mass killings of minority groups, as in the Holocaust or the Rwandan genocide, will depend on the style of populism. But both are generally considered undesirable. You don't want people to fear for their lives simply because of the way they identify. Whether that's identifying with a particular class based on the money they have, or identifying with a particular ethnic group. Generally, most constitutional democracies guarantee you, to a certain degree, a right to life. What do you think? Is the moral risk to civil rights of populism worth the strong support that can be gained through it? What, if any, kinds of populism do you support? And do you think that it can be effective in enacting long-lasting change, given that it necessarily villainizes the opposition and dehumanizes the opposition? What do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Watch this video and more here at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.